Friday. This is Ferguson, USA, Hot Talk Radio, and you are listening to a show called Help, Hope, and Healing with Kim Milberg. I am Kim Milberg. I am your host. I'm also the CEO and founder of Leave None Behind Ministries, LLC. And today, because we're all stuck in quarantine still, today's show is entitled 3 Things to Help Get You Through the Quarantine. Before we go any further, I just wanted to let everyone listening know that this is going to be my last show. Due to circumstances unforeseen and nothing to, be able to counteract it. Like I said, this is going to be my last show. And if you'd like to follow me, I would love to have you on my Facebook page. It is Leave None Behind Ministries on Facebook. I also do another Facebook page called The Collection of Veterans Internet Support Sites. And my website, if you want that, is www.leavenonebehindmin.com. You can follow me any of those 3 places. Or if you want to wait a little while and follow me, you can find me doing a podcast. And I'm going to be doing it with a sweet lady named Kara Hunt. She is a professional writer, and we're going to be working on that together come spring or early summer, depending on this whole quarantine thing. And, if both of us stay healthy, then we should be starting, we're hoping May, June timeframe, maybe as early as April. But if you want to know the up-to-date latest information, go ahead and just find me on my Facebook page, which is Leave None Behind Ministries. Okay, so it is March 27th, and we are all in quarantine due to the coronavirus. Some scary times. A lot of people are getting sick. The virus spreads really fast. Schools have been closed. Businesses have been closed, and people are asked to stay home and shelter in place, or at least stay home. Maybe only going to the grocery store, out in your backyard. Even going to the park has been discouraged for, when it gets warmer. So with us being all stuck at home, and also there being a lot of rain, so that's keeping everybody actually in the house, how do you make it? How do you handle being cooped up with your family who you love? How do you handle being cooped up with them and not all ready to kill each other? And I'll tell you right up front, I've got 3 things, and those three things are: plan your days, get physical, and be quick to forgive. I'm going to expound on those, but if you can only listen for a minute, I thought I'd give you those right up front. Okay, so how do you plan your days? How do you plan your days? If you're on my Facebook page, I would love for you to share with me how you are planning your days. What are you doing? And what works and even what doesn't, because I think it's always important to know what doesn't work too. I have been a stay-at-home mom and homeschooler, and now I stay home and work on my ministry, although I do have a part-time job that does take me out of the house. I also have some immune system issues, so I have to be double extra careful in these quarantine times, or in these COVID virus times. Much of the stuff I already do, being careful around people, washing my hands a lot. It concerns me that people are saying, "Oh, I have to adopt all these new things." I'm like, really? You weren't washing your hands before? Maybe we all needed to have a reset and look at how we are taking care of ourselves and taking care of ourselves in the public venue, because when you're out in public, you need to do things like wash your hands. Keep your hands away from your face, coughing into the crook of your elbow instead of coughing on your hand and then going to shake hands with somebody. Those, to me, because of my immune system issues, those are really basic things. But also, I think taking good care of yourself, covering your mouth, all that stuff, it shows respect to the people who are around you. We've become a pretty disrespectful society. So, this is kind of jacking up our pants, so to speak. We need to be doing this stuff anyway. This is just a very potent reminder that we need to be more conscious of what we're doing when we're out in public, and do it as a respect to ourselves and to other people. But that's a rabbit trail. Okay, all right. So 3 things to help you get through the quarantine. Number 1, plan your days. I know from all the years that I homeschooled, and I have 3 adult children, and I homeschooled one from 3rd grade through 12th grade, and then the other 2 I homeschooled from kindergarten through 12th grade. We had to plan our days, and we also had to plan our days during the summer break, or the breaks that we take in between times, in between semesters or quarters, so we could have fun, we could all get along. It was nice to be able to plan to do things outside the house, go somewhere, go painting, go to the park, things like that. But with the coronavirus, that's kind of out of the picture. So I'll modify, what I tell you. It's important to plan your days because we have one life. We don't get a redo on this. And you really do want to make all your days count. We are home for the purpose, today, all of us are home for the purpose of not spreading the coronavirus. That's I hate to say government, but that's the government's purpose for doing this right now, for keeping us all home. But it's even more important for you to have a purpose for what you're going to do with the time while you're home. Don't just, I'm home. You're going to have days like that, and you're going to have days where you feel like you failed, you fell short, you didn't do enough, or you did too much. It's a learning curve, and don't be too hard on yourself. Instead, have a purpose and have a plan. Okay, say we've got another 2 weeks here quarantined. What's your purpose for the next 2 weeks? What do you want to become? And what do you want to get done? What do you want to become? Are you, completely happy with with yourself and the way you respond? Or do you want to become a deeper person? Do you want to become a funnier person? Do you want to become more lighthearted? Who do you want to become in the next 2 weeks? That can be a springboard to a better you when you go back to work or you go back to school. Those things are all really important, and it'll help you to feel like you didn't waste this time off. Because I think the last thing any of us wants to do is get 3 months, 6 months, a year down the road and go, man, I had those, 3 weeks off. I wish so much that I had done, fill in the blank. You don't want to regret this time. And this time is kind of a gift that you can spend with your family members. And I know some of you out there have not enjoyed this time with your family members. And in fact, there's some parents who maybe found out that their kids were doing drugs, or their kids were into some stuff that they ought not to be into. It could be the flip. Some of you might have found that your parents are drinking, or your parents have got some friendships that they need not be in. So in that way, that's really rough. And there's, this could be the time to deal with it. But don't think you're going to deal with it 24/7. You're going to have to deal with it in bite-sized pieces. And there are, online counseling assistance right now. And honestly, you caught me a little unprepared. I usually have that information, but I don't today. So if you have access to a computer, just Google remote counseling. You can Google online counseling. online counseling assistance. If you're dealing with someone's death, especially if it's been from coronavirus or suicide or whatever, remember there's a fantastic agency called TAPS, TAPS. You can find them online at taps.org. They have a phone number available for you, and you can call. They've got it staffed, or they should have it staffed 24/7. So if you're dealing with a death of a loved one or a friend or a relative, feel free to give TAPS a call, and they will, they've got trained counselors, and they'll talk to you and get you to the point where, you're feeling better before you hang up. They're one of the best groups out there, and I love recommending them. And it's been an honor to promote them. Don't worry, it's not a paid promotion or anything. I do something called the Collection of Veterans Internet Support Sites, and every day I spotlight 2 or 3 veterans support organizations. And when I first started doing this Facebook page, I would actually call the organizations, introduce myself, and say, hey, tell me about yourself. I could have found it online, but I wanted to hear from them. And I made some great friends, and some of the organizations who are you and what do you want? But other organizations, they just love to tell me what they were doing and who they'd ministered to, and not by name, just by situation, who they've been able to help, what they do, and it was wonderful talking to them. But I actually did call TAPS, and they told me what they do, and I recommended people to call them, and those people got back to me and said TAPS was off the charts incredible. So there's my little plug for TAPS. Okay, and that's TAPS too, by the way, and it's taps.org. And then you can get the information and the phone number and everything to talk to them directly. Okay, that was another rabbit trail. All right, plan your days. In these times while you're home, it's imperative to plan your days. And you can break your days down however you want. If you want to break your days down by, every 2 hours you do something different, you can. You can break it down in morning, afternoon, evening, and night. You can do something, if you're an early riser, you can do something like pre-morning, morning, afternoon, night. If you're a late night person, you can do post-night, to where you're staying up at, till maybe even 2, 3 o'clock in the morning or later. But as you plan your days, it's important that you plan in time by yourself, time with others, and time to enrich your own life. Especially if you're a parent and you've got kids home from school, it's really a good idea to have time set aside where you read a book or do something that's going to move you forward. There's a lot of stuff that you can read online. I believe that the libraries are not open. So if you've got a computer, read stuff online. Go to YouTube. You can look up self-help videos. On YouTube, you can type in pretty much anything. If you want to take this time and start learning Spanish, you can go to YouTube and type in "learn Spanish," learn Mandarin, learn Russian, and you can start learning a language before you go back to work. How cool would that be? Even if you just learn a couple of words, you've done something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. Okay, another thing, when I talked about time alone, when you're, indoors with your family, you need to know 2 things. Do you personally recharge by yourself, or do you recharge by being around other people? Okay, you need to answer that question. But then also, for each individual member of your family, ask the same question. Do you recharge by being by yourself, or do you recharge by being with other people? If you recharge by being by yourself, you or whatever family member, say maybe you and your daughter, recharge by being alone, then sometime during the day, and usually for some reason it works out really well, even with teenagers, if that nap time period, that 1 to 3, 2 to 4 period, if they can have that time by themselves, then that's really good, and they can recharge, even rest a little bit, even take a nap. Everybody's schedule is so messed up. I know, even though I'm so used to staying home, this has kind of messed with my schedule because it's messed with my mind. You know, when this all first started and we were told to quarantine, it really played mental games with everybody because, you know, you can't see the virus. You can't, you know, it's not little orange blobs on you like pollen. You know, you can't see it, so you don't know how to exactly protect yourself. And if you know how to protect yourself, excuse me, you don't know if you're actually protecting yourself or you're missing. You know, if you clean your tabletop, did you actually clean that corner over there? Did you miss that corner over there? So it can really mess with your mind. So try to be as factual as you can. As you're going through the day, but also cut yourself some slack. Don't beat yourself up at the end of the day when you go to bed. Hello, us moms, we tend to do that. Don't. You know, there's a learning curve, and if you and maybe your significant other, your spouse, work full time, and you're both home and you're home with the kids, it's, you know, it could be really fun for a while, or you could start out fighting really bad and arguing really bad. And then once you kind of clear the air, then you've got some peace. Just remember, you don't have to talk about the problems all the time. Trust me, you don't. Okay. All right. So time alone. Everybody needs time alone and time together. Excuse me. So break the day into, you know, I had recommended break it down from 9 to noon. 1 to 4 p.m., 4 to 7, in between 4 and 7, then you're going to make dinner and eat dinner. And then from 7 to 10, you know, maybe your 7 to 10 time is when you watch movies. Maybe your 9 a.m. to noon time is when you watch movies. You know, if you don't mind doing something indoors when it's daylight, especially when it's raining. Have days off. You know, it would be really easy to, you know, find a schedule and want to work the schedule 7 days, especially if that schedule is working during the week. But, you know, you may want to do something like work 5 days for school, and if you've got work to do from your job, and then take Saturday and Sunday off. That's kind of keeping to the schedule. But you might want to do something too, like work 3 days, take a day off, work 3 days, take a day off. You know, whatever works best for your family. So no guilt, no condemnation. And yeah, I talked earlier about having a purpose for this time off. Maybe sit down for a half hour with your family today and ask them, what do you want to accomplish in the next, you know, however long we're quarantined, which this makes it hard too, because we don't know if we're going to be quarantined another week or another 3 weeks. So, you know, they're talking about not having the kids go back to school at all. Maybe they go back. This up in the air stuff is really, really hard, and it's another reason why I say don't be too hard on yourself. But ask your family, you know, for each of them, what does each of you want to accomplish? Write it down. Stick it on the refrigerator. Okay? That's all a part of planning your days. Plan your days so you're not beating yourself up at the end of the day, so you're not beating yourself up and feel like you wasted this time 6 months from now. All right? All right, number 2, get physical. We're all within 100 feet from the refrigerator. And as we all have probably learned by now, social distancing could also mean distancing yourself from the refrigerator. It's funny, it is not the biggest piece of, quote, furniture in the house, but it seems to be the most pervasive. I mean, it's like no matter where you are, you know exactly where the refrigerator is. So you tend to eat more. For those who are on a strict diet, whether it's because of a medical condition or whether you're just wanting to lose weight, man, I encourage you, stick to the diet as best you can. Maybe you're not going to do perfect, and maybe you're concerned about running out of food. Yes, you can still go to the grocery store. Just be careful and clean everything real good. While you're at the grocery store, clean the cart handles. When you come home, clean everything as best you can. Don't think you have to rely on Clorox wipes. Realize for the hard surfaces in your home, you can still use soap and water. Soap and water really does still kill the coronavirus. But as you're home together and you're eating, especially if you tend to be eating more pre-prepared, like frozen type foods, there are more toxins in them. And so you really do need to get your sweat on. That's gonna get rid of those toxins, get them out of your system. Drink water. That's something that's really, really important now. Drink as much water as you can. This can be a little challenging if you're concerned about toilet paper issues, not having enough. If you have to, realize you can use paper towels. Don't throw the paper towels down the toilet. I hate to be gross, but I'm a nurse, so gross comes with nursing, sadly. You can dispose. You can use paper towels if you need to dispose of them in a trash can. If you need to carry them outside the house to a trash can, that's cool too. Anyway, okay, work up a sweat. Drink as much water as you can. If you're not a water drinker, if you've gone, years and maybe you had 5 cups of coffee a day, but you only had 1 cup of water, if that, start with 1 cup of water. And you know how I talked about dividing up the day or breaking the day down into groupings. If you divided up your day from 9 to noon, then drink 1 cup of water from 9 to noon, another cup of water from 1 to 4, another cup of water from 4 to 7, another cup of water from 7 to 10. Start there. Don't feel like, oh my gosh, now that I'm home, I have to drink 64 ounces of water. That can be a challenge, especially if you're, 5'2". If you're 6'2", drinking 64 ounces of water is not that big of a deal. But if you're smaller, 64 ounces goes through you pretty quick. So start with, a cup an hour or a cup every couple of hours, and work up, slowly as you get more comfortable drinking water. It'll cleanse your body. It'll cleanse the toxins. It carries the toxins out of the bloodstream, and it'll give you more energy. I think personally water is the best energy drink out there, and if you get it directly from the faucet, it can be pretty cheap. Otherwise, if you need to drink bottled water, totally understand that. You can also get it in gallons. You don't have to get it in the little individual bottles. You can get and now that you're home, you can carry a cup around with you all day. You don't have to worry about, having a thermos or anything. Okay, all right. Nutrition. Right now, because everybody's stressed, it's easy to want comfort foods. It's easy to want pie and cake and cookies and fruit and muffins and higher fat, higher sugar foods. Try to stay away from it, and I especially hit hard on the sugar. Ladies, I'm not going to begrudge you some chocolate during the day. Trust me. I don't keep Hershey's in business by myself, but I am helping support the company. Let's just leave it at that. In times of stress, if you have a snack food or something that you like, Have a few bites of it during the day. You don't need to eat half a cake. You don't need to eat an entire pie or an entire pizza or, 5 bowls of beef stew. Cut down what you're eating. Get busy. Get out of the kitchen. Get away from the refrigerator. And drink water. And do something that'll make you sweat. I'll leave that right there. You can also go for a walk. You can also maybe clean out your basement. If you do and you've got stuff to go to the trash, maybe you don't take it all the way to the trash. Maybe you put it in a corner in your basement to be taken out later after this quarantine is over. There's lots of things you can do around your house that'll help you work up a sweat, including just walking up and down the stairs. If you have some medical issues, don't push it. This is not the time you want to push yourself to where you're having chest pain or other health problems. But I'm hearing lately with this coronavirus, the more functional, the more open you keep your lungs, the less chance you're going to have of getting the coronavirus, the less chance you're going to have of having complications. So you want to keep your lungs in shape. You want to, have times where you keep your heart rate up, you break a sweat, you're breathing hard. It can be literally if you have to run in a circle around your sofa. That's not a bad thing. You may feel a little strange doing it, but or if you got some stairs, whether it be walking up into the front of your house, or you've got you live on a split level or a second story, go up and down the stairs. So you're breathing heavy, and you're breaking a sweat. That's going to help you stay healthier in the long run. What you do not want to do is you do not want to plunk down in front of the TV and sit there for 2 weeks and watch shows that you don't get anything out of, shows that don't challenge your mind. You need to challenge your mind, yes, but you also need to be moving. That's really, really important. Also, personal hygiene. I'm reading people online who's like, I haven't taken a shower in 4 days. And I'm like, and you're living with your family? Okay, maybe take a shower a little more often. You know your own life pattern, and you know how often you were taking a shower if you went to work or washing your hair. I started out that way. I'm like, well, I'm not going anywhere, so I'm not going to, use hair products that I got to spend money on later if nobody's around. And I took a shower and washed my hair, and it was like, oh man, did that feel good? I feel like a human being again. And watch it. And a friend of mine who is a fabulous aerobics instructor, she told me, don't wear elastic waistband pants. If you wanna be aware of what you're eating and make sure you're keeping your weight down, wear jeans, something that's got a waistband to it, a non-expandable waistband. So if you're starting to put on weight, you're gonna feel it. You're going to feel it in jeans, where if you're wearing sweatpants, the elastic stretches and it doesn't tattle on you, so to speak. Now, if you are living with your family in the house, and there's a couple of you there, realize that there's a little story that I know of, and I grew up in a small town outside of Chicago, and we had a couple of bakeries, and it was a small town, so I went to school with the kids whose dad owned the bakery, and both kids, their parents would bring home bread for the family at the end of the day, and I was listening to one kid say, my daddy picks out the best loaf of bread and brings that home to us. And the other kid kind of got up and walked away. The other girl whose dad owned the bakery got up and walked away. And we were talking to her, and she goes, my dad brings home the bad stuff, the stuff that didn't rise all all is well. The stuff that doesn't look so nice, maybe the stuff that, the bread ends and just the stuff that doesn't look good enough to be displayed. My daddy saves the worst for us when the other daddy gave the best to his family. So I challenge you. Which person would you like to be more like? Would you like to give the best to your family, or would you like to give the short ends to your family? I've known that story for years, and I've always aspired to try to give the best to my family. That doesn't mean you go out and be rude to everybody else, but you save the best for your family. It just means you give the best to your family. So decide, what kind of person do you want to be? Do you want to be like the baker that saved the best bread for his family, or the baker that saved the junky stuff for his family? Okay, I'll leave that right there. All right, the last thing I have on my list is to forgive. If you are living in the house with one or more other people, you will get on each other's nerves. Even if you stay in one room and the other person stays in the other room, you will eventually get on each other's nerves, even if you're in separate rooms. How funny is that? Anyway, okay. Say you live in a house with other people and you're all starting to get on each other's nerves, especially now with the weather starting to get nice. You realize, I could get outside. But when you're inside, like it sounds like today and tomorrow, we're going to have a lot of rain, some thunderstorms. We're stuck inside, going to get on each other's nerves. What do? How do you handle it? Maybe you tell that person, hey, you kind of crossed the line when you did such and such. Or I don't want to talk about that. Or we really need to talk about this. And then somebody crosses the line, or somebody says something that they didn't know that they shouldn't have said, or somebody gets angry and says some stuff that they wish they hadn't said, and the other person really, really wishes they hadn't said. If you're a normal family, this kind of stuff is going to happen. How are you going to deal with it? Well, you deal with it by forgiving. Well, how often do you need to forgive? Okay. How often do you get annoyed at the other person? If it's 5 times an hour, then you actually can forgive 5 times an hour. All right. What is forgiving? Is it letting the other person off the hook? No, not necessarily. Forgiving is not holding anything against that other person and committing that person into God's hands and letting God deal with their attitude, their words, their mannerisms, their sense of humor, their lack of a sense of humor. It's letting God deal with it, because God will deal with it in a way that is more eternal and is healthier for everybody. Whereas we tend to want to deal with, microscopic stuff. God's going to deal with things in a whole different way. And you have to trust Him to deal with that person and you correctly. When you have unforgiveness towards somebody, you actually have changes in your brain. Those changes in your brain are, if you can imagine a bunch of threads, and those are neurons in your brain. Imagine those threads all interconnected and interwoven. And those are your neurons, those are your thought patterns, those are what your thoughts run along. If you have an incident, say, where you're quarantined with your husband, and your husband says something smart-mouthed to you, smart-alecky to you, and it hurts your feelings because you were feeling especially scared, so you're feeling especially vulnerable, and your husband managed to say something that really pushed a button. So then you end up, that's a trigger. You end up getting into a big argument. What happens is on those neurons, on those little threads that are neurons, after a time or two, you will start to develop microscopically what looks like a little thorn. when your husband says something again that goes along that neuron, that thought will go by that thorn, and that thorn will secrete a little bit of a neurotransmitter, a little bit of a chemical, which makes you mad all over again, okay? And the more that happens, the more you go over that, the bigger that thorn is going to get. And there will actually, when the thorn gets a fairly large in size, there will actually be some damage around it. And it looks like a little bit of bruising. And that's, I believe that's actually because of the neurotransmitter deposit that is released from the thorn. All right, now, have you ever spent some time talking to somebody who's been hurt or offended, and they tell you they want to tell you what happened? So they tell you the story, and they tell you what the person was wearing and doing and where they were standing and what they said. And do you believe he said that? And all of a sudden, they are reliving the situation. They're angry all over again. They're showing passion all over again. They may even start crying all over again. Well, the brain does not understand or cognitate that you are not going through that all over again. It doesn't realize that it's a memory. And that's what science has found out so far. As you know, the years go by, we find out more and more and more. But at this point, we are recognizing that the brain doesn't realize it's a memory. The brain thinks it's happening all over again, especially when you're narrating it with your mouth, you're speaking it out. The brain thinks you're actually talking to that person. And so all that does is reinforce reinforce what happened. Now, remember I told you that the neurons were like little threads? Well, as you go over that offense again and again and again, and maybe you go to bed that night and you're thinking, I don't believe he said that. He said such and such and such and such. Well, I told him such and such. And then you wake up in the morning and you're still thinking about it. Or maybe you even dreamed about it. What happens is those neurons, those threads, become thicker. The more you go over that thought over and over again, the neurons become thicker. So they go from being fine, microscopic threads to being a little thicker, to being a little thicker. So it's like going from a thread to a string to a rope. And then pretty soon, and we've all known somebody like this, pretty soon that person will get obsessed with that thought. And you've heard people say, I can't stop thinking about it. Well, they literally can't, because they have thought about it so many times. They've grown those neurons from a thread to a string to a rope. And not literally, I'm speaking figuratively when I say thread to a string to a rope. And then more little tiny microscopic thorns grow. So as they go over those thoughts, then they're going to have that neurotransmitter burst. They're going to have all those feelings again. And in the case of my own mom was very, very unable to forgive. And she'd disowned me for a lot of years. And when we got back to where we were communicating, she would tell me about stuff that my dad had done in 1958. And you would have thought, the way she talked about it, that it had happened the week before. She would tell me stuff that I had done. She told me about a neighbor who, we had bought a new car, and I was driving down the alley, and the neighbor backed out of her garage real fast and T-boned me. I didn't even remember it until she said it. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I kind of forgot about that. She's like, you forgot about it? Hey, that was the biggest thing that happened to us that year. How could you forget about it? She just went off. And I realized in listening to her, she had gone from that thread and then developed thorns on the thread, and then grew it into a string with thorns, and then a rope with thorns. And she was still, after all these years, having those neurotransmitter releases to where it was, her brain thought it was happening to her over and over and over again. She could not let go of it. Well, okay, period. All right, now, can a person who's that embittered, that angry, that unforgiving, can they let go of it? Can you let go of it? Yes, you can. And I'm going to show you how, because it all has to do with how you forgive. Know that you can have results in 3 days if you're willing to do a little bit of work up front. All right, first of all, there is something stronger than a thought, whether that thought is a thread or a string or a rope. There's something stronger than that thought, and that thought is a word. And you're going to use the word stop, okay? Now, all right, say, and I use the case of a female because we tend to be a little bit more sensitive. We tend to get scared a little bit more easily. Please don't ding me on that. It's just, that's what I'm finding in my own life and the life of the people around me. The women tend to get their feelings hurt easier, okay? All right, so say somebody in our family does or says something to us. We tend to want to think about it over and over and over again. When you start down that path where you realize you're starting to think about it, say the word out loud, stop, or stop it. You're not talking to them, you're talking to you're basically talking to your brain. I know that sounds a little weird, but just say stop. And what that does is it gets your thought off of that neural network and onto something else. So say stop, then have another thought that you're going to think about. Right now, the perfect thought is, what am I going to do after the quarantine's over? All right, so you're going through your day and you realize you're mopping the kitchen floor and you start to think about what that person said to you. Say stop, and then think about, after the quarantine is over, I'm going to go bike riding. And then imagine yourself riding your bike. You have literally taken yourself off of the toxic neural network or the dangerous neural network, and you've put yourself on a completely different neural network. The more that you do this, the more that you don't think that thought all the way through from beginning to end, the thought will actually, remember I said a thread to a string to a rope? If you've got a rope, it will deteriorate into a string. If you've got a string, it'll deteriorate into a thread. After 3 days, the thorns, remember I told you about the thorns that grow? The thorns will start to literally fall off. And little cells called glial cells can come along and eat them like little Pac-Man. And then you're drinking water, and so you're flushing all that out of your system. You are literally flushing bitterness out of your system. How cool is that? I mean, how cool is that? I love sharing this information because it brings life to people who are, and healing to people who are really, really hurting. Okay. If you're a paramedic, a firefighter, a nurse, EMT, you know, there's always that one patient that just takes your heart and wrings it like a rag. And you tend to think about that a lot. And you think about that patient over and over again, and you remember their face, or you remember, you know, how their spouse cried or how their child cried. And your brain doesn't want to go look, but yet your brain keeps going there. It wants to go kind of like somebody, you know, slowing down to look at an accident. How do you make your brain stop from going there? You say the word stop out loud. The voice is stronger than the thought. So you speak with your voice, you say stop, and then what am I going to do after the quarantine's over? Or maybe you want to say, what's my favorite song? My favorite song is, I don't know, Black Sabbath song, something like that. Or who's popular now? A Cardi B song. And sing it if you have to. What you want to do is you want to get yourself off of that neural network and onto a different neural network. And the more you can do that, and I'm not saying you're not going to think this thought. I'm saying you're not going to complete the thought. You're going to stop the thought before it gets too deep into the, you're not going to think the thought all the way to the end. Stop it with a word. Think of something else. Remove yourself from the neural network, and after 3 days, the thorns will start to dry up, and the size of the neuron will start to diminish. It'll get smaller, and then you'll notice after, depending on whether it was a thread, a string, or a rope, you'll notice in 3 days that you won't have the emotions about it. You'll notice in a week, oh my gosh, I'm not thinking about that. And I had a situation where, this happened to me, where somebody really said something that hurt me, and I was going back and back and back. I called it feeding at the same trough. But when I learned this technique, I started saying stop, and then I'd think about, I had 5 things, 2 songs, a Bible verse, I would imagine a picture of my kids, and 2 songs, Bible verse, a picture of my kids, and something else. I forgot what it is offhand now. But I would mentally grab for one of those 5 things and start thinking about them, or sing my favorite song out loud. And one of them was Victory in Jesus. And my daughter and I used to sing that when she was little, and we would act it out. So, I'd be walking through the great room and be singing Victory in Jesus really loud and acting it out. And I'm sure I looked a little loony, but hey, it got me through, right? And it dried up that neural network, and I was able to let go of that person and that situation, and restore my joy, restore my peace. And when you forgive, you need to go to God and say, God, I forgive this person for, and then name what you're forgiving them for. Don't just say, I forgive this person. That's not a horrible thing, but I forgive this person for saying something really hateful to me on Thursday. Okay? But then there's work to be done in your own mind and your own heart. And forgiveness, sometimes it does come instantly as soon as you pray the prayer. Other times it takes some time. And so I'm telling you, if it's taking time, what you can be doing with that time. Okay? All right. If you guys have any questions, as I said, this is my last show. And you can hit me up with some questions on my Facebook page, which is Leave None Behind Ministries. I'd be more than glad to, go back and forth with you and answer any questions that you have. Also, I also do a page called Collection of Veterans Internet Support Sites. If you are a firefighter, paramedic, EMT, police officer, first responder, or veteran, or a spouse of any of the above, and you are feeling like you need some extra help, you're more than welcome to contact me on my Leave None Behind Ministries page, and I can either recommend to you an organization that can assist you, or if you just have some questions about what we talked about here today, I'm more than happy to, talk to you over Facebook messaging, or, if you need to talk, I'll give you my phone number. You can give me a call. All right. It has been an honor and a pleasure to be able to do this radio show. As I said, this is my last radio show with Ferguson, USA Hot Talk Radio. Stick with me on my Leave None Behind Ministries Facebook page, and I'm going to be doing a podcast with a friend of mine by the name of Kara Hunt. It's going to be a lot of fun. She's a writer, and I have this ministry. She's an actual editor, so we're going to combine our efforts, and I think it's going to be kind of like a smoothie. You combine 2 good fruits and you come up with something pretty fun and pretty different. So, again, thank you for listening in. Hang tough and realize that this quarantine is going to be over. We don't know when, but we will get past it. Don't give up. Don't give in to, self-pity. Don't give in to anger. Don't give in to hopelessness. There is hope. There's hope in Jesus Christ, and there's hope that we'll get through this, and we will be a better and stronger and hopefully more compassionate nation when we come out of this, because I think everybody has been shocked to realize just how interconnected we are, not with just our next door neighbor and our neighbor 2 blocks away, but with our mayors and with our teachers and our first responders and people in other states. I personally have been I did not appreciate and understand the amount of connection that we have to people all over our nation and even all over the world. This has affected us in ways that it's going to take us years to figure out. So, before I go, I'd like to lift the situation up in prayer. Lord, I thank you for this opportunity to get together by radio. And I thank you, Lord, that you are a God who is wanting to teach us in and through this quarantine and this pandemic. Lord, I pray that our hearts be open to what you're saying to us, what you're teaching. Help us to be in your word. Help us to understand what we're reading. Give us a spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of you and your word. And I pray for patience. I pray for kindness as we go through the remainder of this quarantine. And I thank you, Lord, that each and every person in some way is going to come out better on the other side. Lord, we pray, we cry out for souls. We cry out for people to know you in this difficult time, and for you to really meet up and meet with people. Whether it's hearing about you on the internet in a televised service, or if it's just from a neighbor, or if it's just from you sharing your heart with us through your word. Lord, we honor you, we respect you, and we rejoice in this situation, not necessarily because of this situation, this pandemic, but we rejoice in it. And we realize that you've not given us a spirit of fear, but a spirit of love and power and a sound mind. And we thank you for that, Lord. We thank you that you love us. We thank you that you care about what we're going through. And you alone have all the answers. All right. In Jesus' name we pray these things. Amen. All right. I look forward to seeing you all or hearing from you all on my Facebook page and on my podcast. All right. Thank you so much. And to close the show out, I'd like to leave you with some music by guitarist extraordinaire Ron Mitchell off of his first CD.
Hi, my name is Scott Owen, and I'm a retired veteran of the United States Air Force and the General Manager of Ferguson, U.S. Hi, my name is Scott Owen, and I'm a retired veteran of the United States Air Force and the General Manager of Ferguson, USA, HotTalkRadio.com. The mission of